question 5 will always be 16 points and will always be, here's a statement, do you agree with it? And the statement will be the main drive of the exam paper, so always do question 5 last when you've done the thinking about all of the sources and got to know each of the sources. So in this paper, it's the First World War was the main reason why so much progress was made in the use of blood transfusions in the early 20th century. Do you agree? Well, of course, on one hand, there will be evidence to say that it was the First World War that led to developments in blood transfusions. But on the other hand, there will be evidence to suggest that there were other reasons as well. And then after considering both sides of the argument, we will need to make a conclusion that balances the argument, that balances the evidence. So let's have a look at the sources it directs us towards. So it definitely tells us to use sources D, F and G, and we could look at any others we want as well. So we have here source D, which is from a speech about the work of Dr. Karl Landsteiner. In 1901-3, Landsteiner pointed out that problems could occur when blood is transfused from one human to another. His opinions, however, received little attention until 1909. In that year, Landsteiner classified the blood of human beings into well-known AB, and O groups. He showed that problems arise when one person is transfused with the blood of another person who has a different blood group. Well, that clearly shows that before the war this advance had been made, so that goes into the no, it wasn't the First World War hand. Source D goes there. Source F, from a brief history of blood transfusion published in 2005 in a scientific journal, The Biomedical Scientist. The use of blood transfusions advanced with the outbreak of the First World War. Oh, that goes in the yes, it was the First World War hand, quite clearly. Let's see what else it says. This was mainly due to the new knowledge of matching different blood groups and the use of sodium citrate to stop blood clotting. Sodium citrate allowed blood to be stored for use during transfusions. Before this, transfusion was only possible during specially treated blood and by direct person-to-person techniques. And then source G shows this technique of using sodium citrate by Dr. Richard Lewison in 1915. So source G clearly shows that yes, that was during the First World War as well. I could then go and look back through the other sources. For example, in source E, I know it describes it shows a surgeon in the Western Front describing the amount of blood that was lost during operations. So that could be put in source E, could go there. So we now have our plan, and we need to think about some of our own knowledge as well to put on both hands as well, maybe one or two pieces. So there we have our plan for our answer. So when we come to write our answer, it should look something like this. On one hand, it was the First World War that was the main reason why so much progress was made in use of blood transfusions. During the First World War, there was a lot of bloodshed, a lot of operations had to happen, as we can see in source E when he describes all the blood being lost. And so this meant a lot of blood needed to be transported to the front line, which was made possible by the development of sodium citrate, as shown in source F. Sodium citrate was developed by Dr. Richard Lewison during the First World War in 1915. Yet on the other hand, we could say that it wasn't the First World War. Dr. Karl Landsteiner, as it shows us in source D, had already classified blood groups and shown that problems arise when one person is transfused with blood of another person who has a different blood group, and so advances had been made before the First World War. And then you move on to the conclusion, where you use the phrase on balance, so to show that you have weighed up the evidence. So on balance, it was the First World War was the main reason why so much progress was made in the use of blood transfusions, because although Dr. Landsteiner had classified different blood groups, it was only the huge need for blood transfusions during the First World War that led to rapid advances in the transportation of blood and the identification of different blood groups.